Rugby Championship round number 2, Springboks and Pumas for the second time in 2 weeks. We'll go through the squads for this one, the prediction, some of the stats, and yeah, you guys can let me know your thoughts on how this one is going to go. Yeah, it started pretty well for the Springboks, didn't it? 32-12 last week, happy scoreline for Springbok supporters. Bonus point win, second place on the log behind the All Blacks who got a better points difference, but the All Blacks and the Wallabies aren't playing this week, so it's a chance for the Springboks to potentially go top of the log. And for the Pumas, it was pretty disappointing from them last week, so it's a chance to bounce back. Both sides have made some changes, like I mentioned. We'll go over those. And yeah, we'll see how things kind of play out. It is on at 5 o'clock local time this weekend. I think that's like 3 o'clock in the morning for me. I didn't get up for it last week. I watched it on demand, but I may have to get up for this one, seeing as it's the only international game on this weekend. And I was a bit unwell last week, but I'm pretty much back to normal now, so there's no real excuse not to get up and watch the game at 3 o'clock in the morning, especially seeing as we're in lockdown. I can't go anywhere anyway, so might as well just get up and watch some rugby. We will see. In terms of the lineups, we'll start with the Springboks, who I think are technically the away team for this one, so expect to see like the paint on the pitch being, you know, Pumas themed and the ball and whatnot, but you know, it's still a home game for the Springboks. They've changed the front row of the Springboks. They've gone with Nyakane, Marx, and Toit. It's Thomas Toit. So a couple of the guys from the bench last week, Nyakane and Marx, get starts, and Thomas Toit is in the squad. He missed out on the Lions tour. I think he had COVID. Jacques Nienaber mentioned in the press conference, so he was kind of a bit delayed in his ability to get starting for the Springboks, but they're pretty happy to have him back. Lood was pretty good last week as well, so some big shoes to fill, but Thomas is a big old scrummager. And likewise, Trevor Nyakane, man, he's had a cracking time in the last few weeks, so yeah, a different role, like Jacques Nienaber mentioned. It's a different role for him to be starting rather than coming off the bench, so we'll see what kind of impact he can have. He replaces Oxenche, and Marx is in for Trevor, who had a pretty good debut last week, you'd have to say as well. The locks, they've made one change. Marvin Orie comes in for Big Evan Etzebeth, so talking about big shoes to fill. They probably don't come much bigger than Big Evans, but Lood is still there. So experienced hand alongside Marvin Orie, who's kind of, I don't think he's ever started a test for the Springboks before. So a wee bit of pressure on him. He'll need to perform well because, man, South Africa's got heaps of locks. Heaps of locks. I didn't pick Marvin Orie when I was picking like a pre-Lions 23 for the box, and when you weren't sure if Snyman and Diaka were even going to be available. But yeah, he needs to show us that he can kind of step up the test level. But as I mentioned, he's not started before, so now is the perfect time to do that. Kolisi doesn't get a rest. He is still captain on the open side. So, I mean, he's been immense game after game, but they keep talking about player welfare. Eventually, the man needs to have a break, although from what the coach says, even the guys who aren't playing don't really get a break. They're still pretty intense with all the training and stuff. Mostert's there on the blind side replacing Kwaka Smith after getting a break of his own, and Wiese is there after his man of the match performance last week where he was just getting ball carries all day long. He was having an absolute fun time last week, man. They just kept kicking him the ball. They won't be doing that this week, surely. Reinach and Pollard are 9-10, so our Yankees is replaced by Pollard, who got the week off last week. And remember, Reinach was actually pretty good with his kicking game. His speed was there, although he didn't really kick as much as Elton. I mean, I think when Faf plays, he kicks more than whoever plays 10, but it was kind of switched around last week, so that will be one to watch, whether they kick more off 9 or off 10. I mean, they both kicked a lot. The Springboks kicked a lot last week, but it was a bit of a reversal. It's usually more off 9, less off 10, whereas the other way around last week. Allende and is that blockbusting midfield. Those guys are back, replacing Creel and Stain, who didn't exactly set the world alight, to be fair. Creel was kind of kept pretty quiet. Stain had a few big carries, but was largely contained as well. Missed a couple of long shots at goal. But, I mean, and Allende are clearly your best combo, so it's good to see them back. Maybe not as good news for the Pumas. And likewise, the back three, it's an all-new back three with Mapimpi, Kolbe, and Roux, so it's back to that British and Irish Lions. You know, the team that played those guys being back. And, yeah, I mean, Nkosi, I don't think he even got any runs last week, so hopefully Cheslin gets some ball out on the right. And Mapimpi, man, He's been phenomenal. But man, Fassi was pretty good last week as well. So yeah, he's maybe got a little bit of pressure on him from a younger guy, but maybe it's Roux that'll be feeling the pressure from Fassi as well, because I think fullback is where he excels even more. Bench Mbonambi, Kitsoff and Malherba. Like I always mention with the Springboks, that's pretty much most teams starting front row, but it's on the bench, so they will continue to add some pain when they come on. Nicholas Janssen van Rensburg will get a start, or his first start for the Springboks, first cap for the Springboks when he comes on, so congratulations to him. Quacker Smith and Dan Dupree are there on the bench. Hendrickse, who got a try on his debut last week, is there, and Willemse is there as well, drops to the bench. He will need to have a bit of better ball handling when he comes on, but hopefully from the bench he doesn't quite have those same maybe jitters that he did when he was starting last week. So still a heap of injuries with the Springboks. There's still no Alstad, no Vermeulen, Van Staden is injured, Peter Stifty Toy still injured, Quacker Smith, Faf de Klerk is still injured, Quacker Smith's playing. Yeah, so still a lot of injuries for the Springboks, but they're still fielding a pretty bloody strong team. For the Pumas, they've likewise made quite a few changes. It's maybe not as strong a team. When you look at the Springboks team and go, that team is probably stronger than the one that played last week. The Pumas one is maybe a slight step back. Maybe. It's the same front row, Chaparro, Montoya, who's captain, and Cordella in the front row. The scrum was under a bit of pressure. But I think it was especially when the reserves came on for the Springboks that put the starting Pumas guys who were maybe tiring a bit under a bit of extra pressure. So how many minutes the Pumas front row has to go will be an interesting one. Alemano and Lavanini is an all-new second row. Both of those guys were on the bench last week. Lavanini is a big physical presence, certainly. He's the biggest man of all those Argentinian locks. Alemano has kind of been that third guy behind Lavanini and Petty for a while, but he's been getting some proper minutes for Argentina in the last couple of years. Petty, like I mentioned, is actually in the back row this week. He's on the right flank for them, so yeah, apparently for his club he plays a lot of flank, so yeah, they should be pretty strong at line-out time with a lot of kind of line-out options. They've also got Matera and Brody at 6 and 8 respectively, so yeah, it's a bit of a shift. Issa was the guy who played on the right last week. He's injured, so that's an unfortunate one because he was one of the few guys who was actually able to get some proper carrying meters up against the Bok defense. Bertrano and Miotti is an all-new 9-10 combo as well, so Sanchez and Escura are down to the bench. Miotti's not gotten a lot of minutes in recent times, to be fair. It's pretty much all been Sanchez. Yeah, I think Carreras maybe got a few minutes at 10 when Sanchez went off once, but Miotti's had very few minutes, so he's a guy whose development needs to continue, so him getting a start is actually, I think, a welcome change, although it's a heck of a pressure situation. He doesn't take the ball to the line that much. He's more of a kind of playmaker distributor, so he'll need some support from the guys outside him, like De La Fuente and Chocobaras, who are 12 and 13. They'll need to have a bigger impact than they did last week because they were kept pretty quiet. Carreras moves to the left wing. Mendy is there on the right wing, the 7s man. He's on his debut. And then Malia is there at 15. Remember, he got a red card against Wales for a kind of high tackle. So, yeah, he's back and available for selection. The bench, Bosch, Gijena, who's come in for Muzio, Medrano, Crema, and Gonzalez. Those are the 4 replacements. 3 backs in Escura, Sanchez, and Sinti, another 7s man. Now, Sinti may be a bit of a good luck charm because when they beat the All Blacks, he was an unused substitute on the bench in that game. So maybe he'll be an unused substitute in a first win in South Africa ever? No, second win in South Africa. Maybe. No pressure. The head-to-head stuff, man. You look at last week's game. Like, if you look at the run meters at face value, 398 to the Springboks, 323 to the Argentinians, doesn't look that different. But if you look at the number of carries that they had to make to get that, like the Boks end up with 5.3 meters a carry, which is really good. 4 is the magic number. 5.3 is great, whereas the Pumas were at 3.1, which is, yeah, bad. It means that they were running into a brick wall and not really getting far. So they'll need to find a way to somehow unlock that defense, man. Like, defenders beaten us 19 to 22 with the Pumas edging it. But again, they had way more carries. So they weren't getting as kind of efficient carries when they were carrying the ball. Likewise, clean breaks 4 to 2 in favor of the Pumas. But again, it's kind of a false stat because there wasn't much happening from the times when they were getting the breaks. Like Issa got one of them and just ended up booting it into touch for a territorial game, but nothing much more. The scrum, like I mentioned, will be under a bit of pressure for the Pumas, especially when that bomb squad comes on. They will need to be strong and have faith in their bench. Maybe Bosch, Nyakane, Medrano need to come on at about the same time to kind of match the man for man, but whether they don't have as much faith in their bench as the starting guys as maybe the Springboks do will be an interesting one. Line-outs, both sides could probably be better. Both sides missed 2, 6 from 8 for the Boks, 8 from 10 for the Pumas last week. Neither side will be all that happy with that. You want to be at more than 80% for sure. Turnovers conceded, the Pumas, man, 15. 15. The Boks had 7. A lot of those were just failing to catch contestable kicks. That's an area where they will absolutely need to be stronger than last week. Last week, that was a real weakness in the Pumas game. But they'll know what's coming for them this week if they for some reason, were not aware. And, man, they kept kicking the ball to Jasper Wiese, man. The dude had 79 run meters and beat 7 defenders. The Boks beat 19 defenders and Jasper Wiese beat 7 of them. Shows you don't kick the bloody guy the ball. If you are going to kick it, you need to have someone chasing it effectively and putting him under pressure when he's catching the bloody thing. Don't give him a free carry. Seriously, because the guy is dangerous. Jager had 14 out of 15 tackles, so expect high work rate from him. Like I mentioned, no Issa for the Pumas. He had 51 run meters last week, which was one of their more effective carriers. A lot of their guys struggled. I mentioned the midfield. The combined midfield last week, which was the same 2 guys for the Pumas, had 20 run meters between them. 20 run meters between them is not very good. It means they're not getting really anywhere. Whereas I think Franz Stein, who wasn't exactly setting the world alight, had 28. One man. So to put that into context, man, it shows that the Pumas were struggling a bit. Montoya, though, had 13 out of 13 tackles. He had turnovers, so he was certainly putting his hand up. He needs to see a bit more from his teammates, I would imagine. The kicking from hand, like I mentioned, 46 to 29. The Boks having more. A mix of 9 and 10. The Pumas kicked it a lot as well, more off 10. They don't really kick a lot off 9, but anyway. Like I mentioned, the last 5, it's 4-1 in favour of the Boks. That 2018 loss to the Pumas is starting to seem like ancient history at this point. Average score over the last 5 games is 31 points to 19, so not all that different from the scoreline we saw last week. The predictions, though, the bookies have got the Boks by 13 points. And the Rugby Forecast algorithm goes one step further and says the Springboks by 18 points. So, yeah, it's a big job in front of the Pumas, guys. The Springboks have made a lot of changes, but for the most part, you look at those changes and go, that's like strengthening of positions, man. Like, you're bringing in Pollard, you're bringing in Allende and you're bringing in Kolbe, you're bringing in Roux, like, you're bringing in a bunch of World Cup winners, whereas the Pumas have got a debutant on one wing. They've got Malia, who's not all that experienced at fullback. He's going to be under heaps of pressure. They've changed their 19 combo. They've put in Miotti, who I mentioned doesn't get a lot of minutes compared to Sanchez, who's been their kind of version of Pollard for all that time. So it looks to be a tough one for the Pumas, but I do hope they show us a bit more than they did last week, because last week they did struggle with what the Springboks threw at them. Can they unlock the Springboks defense? That remains a big question. Can the Springboks get 2 bonus point wins in a row? We will have to wait and see. Yeah, you guys enjoy the game. Do let me know your thoughts on how you think this one is going to go. If you got all 14 minutes through this video, please do consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel. That kind of stuff helps out immensely. But yes, it's been a pleasure, guys. I will talk to you guys again soon. See you later.